First question to.
Would you be willing to start with a zero-based budget to figure out what's needed for essential services? And how would you design that budget to cover those essential services while maybe cutting in other areas? I know we hear a lot of budget talk these days.
The question is, as I understand it, is would I be willing to go to zero budgeting and start
Right.
all
Start
over? In other words, redefine the city as of right now with no budget and say, okay, we're going to start all over again, and what are the essential things that we do? Obviously, the most important is public safety. Public safety in the form of the police and the fire, EMS, all of that. Beyond the public safety, we have a number of other factors. I would say, are we including schools here?
No, I mean, we're just strictly talking the
Just,
city
we're
budget,
just talking
yes.
about the infrastructure. I would say the next important thing would be the social services are essential. They're not a very large part of the budget now, but it's the sort of thing that I think that we have to keep in mind for everybody, because it is the government's responsibility at all levels to help protect those of us, those amongst us, who are the least vulnerable. So I would say social services are important. Certainly public safety, all of those issues, the infrastructure of the roads, the way everything, the water drains away from flood-prone areas, all of the public works ideas. Those things, I would say that's where you start. And beyond that, as we know, city budgets become much more complicated.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Anderson. Stan Herman, same question.
Thank you. Essential services for the city are police and fire protection, and streets, and city water, city sewer. I had the Roto-Rooter franchise for 4 years in Manhattan, so I learned more about the sanitary sewer than I really want to know. And there's certain just especially for cities. And then you have these others that are nicer, you know, like parks and recreation facilities, but the priority, you have to start with the basics. The streets. I think the city street department did a fantastic job of cleaning off the streets here in Manhattan. They spent a lot of money and a lot of time, a lot of overtime, and that's all. The essential part is to open up the streets so people can get through, and the police and fire can get through. So you start out with the basics, and then you work out from there. And the other things that come along, they're nice to have, but sometimes you just can't afford them right now, or you might have to reduce the other facilities, you know, that would be nice to have it, but we just can't afford it right now. I think in the future here, the budget is going to be the biggest item. The biggest thing that's coming along is how do you keep up the necessary services without breaking the bank and breaking the budget there and having to raise taxes dramatically.
Thank you, Mr. Herman. Rich Jankovich, same question.
I think that's an interesting exercise, and it would be a lot of fun to try and do that. But I would wager to say that anybody listening and everybody sitting in this room would have great difficulty in agreeing what direction each of those line items that we wanted to have would go. And that's part of what that we face right now as we look at the budgeting process going forward. And as cantankerous as it is to go through that, it's essential that we make sure that we look at the priorities that we have and manage the growth that's coming forward. If we could start at zero, we take us back in time to when the city was founded, and we would look very different today maybe than we do. So I would say that each time we go through a budget process, in some cases, we look at a zero budget and move forward. You know, my thought is as we move forward into the budgeting process that we inherit that is already underway once we're elected in April, that we have to look at those priorities today. So we're really looking out in 2012 for the next year's budget as we move forward. And I think that's the critical part. We figure out the priorities that we need. We don't want to restrict any of the services that we have. We also have to be very conscious of the funding that you're providing the city as taxpayers and how we spend those dollars. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jankovich. Wynn Butler, same question.
Okay, the question is, zero base. Should we start at zero base? And of course, that's what this election is about. Okay, it's about priorities, and what the city has to do is start managing its budget very much like we do a household budget. And that entails making a list, start with number one and work on down. Now, what are the essential things? Of course, everyone, it has to say fire, police, emergency medical services, the health department, public safety. After that, it becomes tricky. And who you elect for the city commissioners will need to set those priorities. We've got limited amount of tax dollars. We cannot fund everything. Just like a household budget that might have 50, 60 things that we would desire to have, we cannot purchase all of our wants. We have to take care of our needs. And the trick is, there may be some disagreement on what a need is and what a want is. And so the five folks that will end up sitting on the commission will end up driving that. And if we look at, should taxes be raised? Basically, the bottom line should be, they should not be raised unless inflation, keep up with inflation. And that's about the only point. But we cannot sacrifice our current city infrastructure or the public safety in the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. John Mata.
I believe in the zero-based budgeting concept. It is impractical, though, to just all of a sudden start from scratch. So actually, I do budgets a lot, so I have a process on how to get there. First, you start with whatever you spent last year, or your best projection. In other words, let's not budget against the budget, which is how we've done in the past. Let's budget against our best projection. Okay, then we lay everything out and take out one-time costs. For example, we had to do a FEMA study that was $300,000 or $400,000. We get that out of the number. Take all the one-time costs out. Okay, then we do have to add in those known things that we do know about to that number. Then we look at everything that's there, we say, how can we do it more efficiently? Get and make those decisions. Then we slice it a different direction. What's essential, what's not essential? Everyone talked about a lot of the essential things here. I agree with police, fire, those things. Then there's things that are called traditional that we also accept, like parks and recs, arts, and those things. Okay, then we have to take a look at things that are outside of that scope. Then once we go forward, I think there's something we have to do. We go forward from the budget, which is also make sure we've got that out a few years. So we have to make a decision on something and it's extra. We can look at those numbers and say, okay, we want to do this. What do we need to take out if it's going to cost us extra money? Not look at things in isolation.